how do I know what our grocery budget should be now after increasing the budget several times as a family of 5? It's hard to pick a dollar amount it should be to eat healthy, but I keep going over budget. So this is a very real reality of inflation. Inflation means that prices are increasing, and high inflation, and the reason the Fed is raising interest rates to get inflation under control is high inflation makes these things less predictable in our budget, right? We're used to very small, gradual price increases that our income and our salaries can keep pace with. And when you have a high inflationary environment, that becomes less true. We're not used to having our grocery budget increase by 10 or 15% in the course of the year. And here's the thing to know too about budgeting in general. Budgets are not made to be set and forget, right? And they're supposed to be flexible. They're supposed to be guidelines that help you achieve your financial goals, but they have to be flexible. You have to be able to feed your family, right? Like if you max out your grocery budget at the end of week 3, you can't tell your family for the last week of the month, sorry guys, you just can't eat now. Unfortunately, you can't starve your family in order to meet your budget. So if you're consistently not able to meet your grocery budget, then you may have to flex it, right? You may have to raise it. And that is just a function of the current environment that we're living in. It is a function and a ramification of having high inflation. In terms of how you can minimize your grocery budget, we've shared and talked about lots of different ways to minimize costs when it comes to food spend. Things like meal planning, things like buying in bulk, things like, I'm drawing a blank right now, but I will link up in my stories too. I have a couple posts just on how to save money in general. One is 25 ways to save $500 or more. And it goes through all the different kind of actions that you can take to kind of right size your budget, and you generate that savings if it's not immediate over some period of time. I think one of the most difficult things about the current situation is that many of us have already been doing that consistently for the last 2 years, right? We were already eating out less and eating at home more because of the pandemic, right? For health reasons. And so that's not a flex that many people now have. The other thing is, and so because of that, we were already eating at home more, which is less expensive than eating out. And we had already reduced our food budget that way. But the reality is that you can't completely eliminate and offset inflation. There's only so many different levers that you can pull. And so what I would say is that as long as inflation remains elevated, your grocery budget is going to continue to go up. That is why getting inflation under control is so important. So I wish I had better news there, but the reality is that you're just going to have to keep flexing it, which also means you're going to have to flex other areas of your budget in the opposite direction. And oh, by the way, that's why we're under a threat of a recession right now, because in order to pay for essentials and needs like food, like gas, like your utility bill to keep your family warm this winter, you are going to have to reduce spending on things like the holidays, right? On things like wants and like streaming services, on things like you're probably not going to be buying new TVs and new cars if you don't need them. You're probably going to be traveling less because you can't afford to. That is kind of why the current situation is likely to induce an economic downturn. Okay. So again, way over the 30-minute mark now, but I will save this to my video replays. I will also, like I said, I've been picking kind of 1 or 2 questions from each live that I think is most applicable and most relevant. And I've started posting those up on YouTube. I also am then going to put on my to-do list to then take those videos and embed them in blog posts with more data and more details, because I think that's relevant for people. So check those out. Be sure to follow me on YouTube. Be sure to sign up for the newsletter so you get updated blog posts. A couple things